In the heart of Western Europe lies a nation that has shaped the modern world. More than almost any other, a land of kings and revolutionaries, of philosophers and warriors, of art that changed how we see beauty, and laws that changed how we see justice. This is France, a story written in blood, ink, and stone. From the ancient Gauls who defied Rome, to the revolution that shook the thrones of Europe, to the republic that stands today. In the next 15 minutes, we will travel through 2,000 years of history to understand how France became France. Welcome, PP. Before it was France, it was Gaul. Around 600 BC, Celtic tribes migrated into this fertile land between the Atlantic, the Pyrenees, and the Rhine. They were not a single nation, but a patchwork of fiercely independent tribes. The Arverni, the Aedui, the Belgi. They built hilltop fortresses, traded across Europe, and practiced a religion led by Druids, who held immense power. But the ancient world had a force that swallowed everyone in its path. Rome. In 58 BC, an ambitious Roman general named Julius Caesar saw his opportunity. He claimed the Gauls were threatening Roman allies. The truth was simpler. Gaul was rich in gold, grain, and glory. For 8 brutal years, Caesar waged war across the land. The Gauls fought heroically. Their leader, Vercingetorix, united the tribes and nearly defeated Caesar at the Battle of Gergovia. But in 52 BC, at Alesia, Caesar's brilliant siege tactics crushed the rebellion. Vercingetorix surrendered, and Gaul became Roman. For nearly 5 centuries, Roman Gaul prospered. The Romans built roads, aqueducts, and cities that still stand today. Nimes, Arles, Lyon. They brought Latin, which would slowly transform into French. They brought wine, which would become a cornerstone of French culture. And in the south, they built the Pont du Gard, an aqueduct so perfect it still arches across the Gardanne River after 2,000 years. But empires fall. By the 5th century AD, Rome was crumbling under barbarian invasions. In 486 AD, a Frankish warlord named Clovis defeated the last Roman governor and claimed the land for himself. A new age had begun. The Franks were Germanic tribes who had migrated westward, and, under Clovis, they forged the first French kingdom. But Clovis did something revolutionary. He converted to Christianity. This wasn't just personal faith. It was political genius. The Church was the most powerful institution in Europe, and by embracing it, Clovis gained legitimacy that would bind his dynasty to the throne for centuries. His descendants, the Merovingians, ruled for 200 years, but real power shifted to their advisors, the mayors of the palace. In 732, one such mayor, Charles Martel, stopped a massive Muslim invasion from Spain. At the Battle of Tours, historians still debate what would have happened if he had lost. But one thing is clear. Charles Martel saved Christian Europe, and his family became its greatest dynasty. The Franks were Germanic tribes who had migrated westward, and under Clovis, they forged the first French kingdom. Charlemagne built an empire that stretched from the Pyrenees to Germany. He promoted learning, reformed the law, and made his capital at Aachen a center of civilization. When he died in 814, he was buried sitting on a golden throne, holding his sword, a warrior king to the very end. But Charlemagne's empire did not survive his grandsons. The Treaty of Verdun in 843 divided it into 3 parts. The western slice, Francia Occidentalis, would slowly become France. The Middle Ages in France were a time of both darkness and light. The Vikings raided the coasts until a Frankish leader named Rollo was given Normandy in exchange for peace. The Crusades were launched from French soil, and across the land, in soaring Gothic cathedrals like Notre Dame and Chartres, stone and glass reached toward heaven in ways the world had never seen. But the medieval French state was weak. Powerful nobles controlled their own territories. The king in Paris was often little more than a figurehead. That would change, but only through a catastrophe. In 1337, a dispute over the French throne ignited a conflict that would last years. The kings of England, who held vast territories in France, claimed the crown itself. What followed was one of the most devastating wars in European history. The English won stunning victories. At Crécy in 1346, their longbowmen cut down French knights like wheat. At Poitiers in 1356, they captured the French king. At Agincourt, a young English king named Henry V achieved one of the greatest military triumphs in history. By 1420, France was on its knees. The Treaty of Troyes recognized Henry V as heir to the French throne. It seemed France would simply become part of England. Then, from the ashes, a miracle emerged. In 1429, a 17-year-old peasant girl named Joan of Arc appeared at the court of the uncrowned French Dauphin. She claimed God had sent her to save France. Dressed in armor and carrying a banner, she led the French army to relieve the besieged city of Orleans. She won. She then escorted the Dauphin to Reims, where the besieged city of Orleans. She won. She then escorted the Dauphin to Reims, where he was crowned Charles VII. For a brief, blazing moment, France had hope. But Joan was captured by the English, tried as a heretic, and burned at the stake in Rouen in 1431. She was just 19 years old. Yet her sacrifice inspired a nation. Slowly, French forces drove the English back. By 1453, only Calais remained in English hands. France had survived, and a new sense of national identity was born. The 16th and 17th centuries saw France transform from a medieval patchwork into Europe's most powerful absolute monarchy. The key architect of this transformation was Louis XIV, the Sun King. Louis came to the throne in 1643 at the age of 4. By the time he died in 1715, he had ruled for 72 years, the longest reign of any major European monarch. He built the Palace of Versailles, a monument to power so overwhelming it still stuns visitors today. He moved the entire government there, forcing nobles to compete for his favor in an elaborate dance of etiquette. He famously declared, "Le state, saith me, I am the state." Under Louis XIV, France became the cultural capital of Europe. French was the language of diplomacy, art, and philosophy. Molière revolutionized theater. Racine wrote tragedies that are still performed. But this glittering surface hid deep rot. Louis XIV fought endless, ruinous wars. His persecution of Protestants drove skilled craftsmen into exile. And the vast majority of French people, peasants, laboring under crushing taxes, saw none of their size splendor. By the time his great-great-grandson Louis XVI took the throne in 1774, France was bankrupt, its people hungry, and its ideas about to explode. The French Revolution didn't begin with gunfire. It began with words. In the 18th century, French philosophers, Voltaire, Rousseau, Montesquieu had challenged the very foundations of the old order. They asked, why should one man rule by birthright? Why should the church control education? Why should ordinary people have no say in the laws that govern them? These ideas spread through salons, coffee houses, and a growing press. By